Hello, I'm Karina Roman. This is CBC News Network. Andrew Nichols is away. The Summerland wildfire in British Columbia continues to grow. The community's mayor says properties have been destroyed, but that it is still too early to know the full scope of the destruction.
We know structures have been lost. We know people's homes have been lost. We don't know how many. It's still a fire that's out of control. So basically, it is a fire zone, and they're fighting the fire. We're not able to get in there to do that kind of tally to assess the damage yet.
The fast-moving Bald Range wildfire doubled in size over the weekend, forcing the evacuation of about 20,000 people in the southern Okanagan region. CBC's Michelle Allen has the latest.
Well, Karina, we know there's over 100 active wildfires currently burning in the province, mostly in the Okanagan Valley. That includes the Pear Lake and the Bald Range wildfire near Summerland, where, as we know, an 80-year-old woman died this weekend while trying to escape. Over 20,000 people in the province are ordered to evacuate their homes, but we are seeing some evacuation orders lifted and reduced to just alerts. So some people in the Pear Lake area will be allowed to return to their homes.
And tell us about the air quality concerns these fires are prompting.
A lot of southern BC is under Environment Canada air quality warnings right now, and the province says there's also a big risk of lightning causing more wildfires. So particularly in the central interior and the Okanagan Valley, which aren't getting much precipitation. And on top of that, there's going to be high temperatures and serious wind gusts.
CBC's Michelle Allen in Vancouver. We're taking you now to Victoria. BC's Minister of Forests Ravi Parmar is speaking to the media. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ravi Parmar, BC's Minister of Forests and the Minister responsible for the BC Wildfire Service. I just want to begin at the outset by acknowledging that this has been a very challenging weekend for British Columbians, in particular in the Okanagan. I just had an opportunity to be able to brief the Premier just a little while ago on the status of the Bald Range fire, as well as fires that are occurring across British Columbia. In particular, I want to once again thank the BC Wildfire Service, emergency personnel, and all those that stepped up in the evening of Friday right into the early morning of Saturday and throughout the evening under very, very difficult circumstances. In particular, I want to recognize the incredible heroic efforts of our BC wildland firefighters. That fire, when it started, grew in size and intensity very quickly. And very quickly, our crews had to respond, not just from a fire suppression perspective, but quickly they had to revert their resources towards actually evacuating people, including a kids camp. And so there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of people that certainly were going about their way on a Friday evening that very quickly had to be evacuated safely as they were within the fire perimeter. I also want to offer my condolences to the family of the individual, the woman that lost her life, and I know that the RCMP will be available to answer any questions in particular to that. The reason I'm here is to be able to announce on behalf of the BC Wildfire Service under the Wildfire Act, we advised British Columbians today that we are putting a temporary ban in place for recreational off-roading within a number of fire centres, the Kamloops Fire Centre, the Southeast Fire Centre, as well as parts of the Caribou Fire Centre and the Coastal Fire Centre. That order is now made available on the BC Wildfire Service app, and in particular for those residents in the Caribou and Coastal Fire Centres, you'll be able to see within a map exactly where this prohibition is in place. I would note that this prohibition does not include private land, nor does it include national parks. There's obviously other mechanisms that the federal government is responsible for in regards to its national parks. And again, this is not an order under the provincial state of emergency. This is a power that has already been made available to me and my team under the Wildfire Act. We are continuing to monitor the situation here in British Columbia. We continue to bring on more resources in the form of aerial crews. But as I've reminded British Columbians, in the case of the Bald Range fire, we could have put 1,000 more helicopters, 1,000 more people on the ground, and it wouldn't have made a difference. And in fact, it would have been a dangerous situation. At about 5:30, 6 o'clock, we had 19 helicopters on that fire, and there was nothing we could do to stop the intensity of a rank 5 and 6 fire. And so again, on the Bald Range fire, we're continuing to mobilize more resources. The announcement yesterday or the day before of the Bradley Creek fire being held has allowed us to be able to get more resources that were on the ground there towards Summerland. And I just had an opportunity to speak to the Mayor of Summerland just earlier today to once again provide my thanks to him and his team for the outstanding work that they're doing under very difficult circumstances. So with that, happy to take your questions.
Minister, the mayor of Merritt.
Yeah, all I can provide is an updated
Shutdown of BC's backcountry for 2 weeks. So why have it just be for vehicles? Why not completely shut down access to the backcountry?
Well, a couple of things. It is something without a doubt that is under consideration, and if it's something that we require, we won't hesitate to be able to take that step. A couple of things. One is we don't have an ability to be able to enforce that. We are responsible for a very large land base. I would say that in regards to this temporary ban that we have in place for recreational vehicles, I think of ATVs in particular, there is a fine in place up to $1,100 if you are found in contravention of this order. But I had an opportunity to be able to meet with the Mayor of Merritt last week and certainly take his word and the words of many local government leaders that I've spoken to, and certainly happy for the Wildfire Service to completely take those comments into consideration as part of further orders that may come. But I would also note, in addition to the concerns around enforcement, one of the things that we do rely heavily on is British Columbians in the back roads doing their part to be able to report fires, especially lightning-caused fires as well. So without a doubt, a double-edged sword. I think my message is don't be stupid. If you're going out into the back roads, do your part. There are people going in there for agricultural reasons. There are people going in there that are doing their part. But if you're going in there on an ATV, you no longer will be able to because of this order. And if you start a fire, you are reverting resources away from a lightning fire towards a human-caused fire. And I can't think of something more stupid right now, given the challenges we're facing.
In terms of the Bald Range fire, we know that over 20,000 people have been evacuated. Are you able to provide any update in terms of the number of structures that have either been lost or damaged because of that fire in places like Summerland, Beachland, surrounding areas?
Yeah, all I can provide as an update is that we're continuing to have dozens of structure protection units on site to be able to help with the situation. I don't have any information at this time in regards to the number of structure losses. Without a doubt, there has been structure losses, and I will leave it to my colleague, Minister Green, in particular the local government, to share that information. One of the challenges, as you can imagine right now, is there is an inability for some of the crews to be able to get out on the ground and do those assessments, and our most important information that we need to provide is to those families and to those residents of potential structure loss before we provide that information to the media and British Columbians.
There's lots of rumors swirling around about what started that fire. Are we any closer to determining the reason for the start of that fire on Friday?
I understand that there is an active RCMP investigation underway, and so I would refer that question to the RCMP.
Grass is on fire, like just for somebody that maybe doesn't use an ATV in the backcountry. Why is that necessary?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. I asked the same question when my team recommended this to me over the weekend and into this morning. You're exactly right. Right now, for recreational reasons, these activities can cause fires. And so we know that we are in the midst of a very challenging wildfire situation here in British Columbia. August is the month where people are reclamating the most and going out and enjoying the beauty that British Columbia has to offer. But we would ask, in the case of the Kamloops Fire Centre, the Southeast Fire Centre, and the appropriate parts of the Coastal and Caribou Fire Centre, the British Columbians don't use those recreational vehicles. Again, want to recommend that they follow the BC Wildfire Service app for all of the information. Any additional spark can cause devastation for communities, and I've had the first-hand knowledge of speaking to so many mayors, like the Mayor of Clinton, who has certainly expressed frustration with the impact that fires have caused in the case of the Pear Lake fire. And so right now we know that dry lightning is in the forecast, and every activity on the land base has consequences. And so my ask of British Columbians is the same ask that I've been providing to British Columbians all season long. Now is the time for us to do our part. British Columbians know all too well how much work our wildland firefighters are doing right now. You see the photos, you see the videos, you see people coming together. Think of those in evacuation centers. We don't need more of that. Let's all continue to do our part, because I know that these lightnings are going to strike more fires as well.
What is the forecast that you're getting from, you're obviously getting daily briefings on how we're looking in the coming days and weeks? ahead, are things going to get worse before they get better?
I think what we are doing, Mark, is we are preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. What we do know is we do have dry lightning in the forecast over the next 48 hours. The intensity of that obviously will shift with weather patterns, but what we do also know, given the challenges we faced with the Bald Range fire, is we have very hot and dry conditions, and with those hot and dry conditions, what we can see is fires like what we experienced Friday evening, where you had a fire that was about 50 hectares and in a matter of an hour grew to 1,000 hectares, and about 9:30, 10 o'clock was at 5,000 hectares, and there was nothing you could do to stop that fire.
Has the province made an official ask from Ottawa for military support, and if not, will we be required to do that?
Yeah, so we are in constant conversations with the federal government on a number of supports. I'm aware as of a briefing a little while ago that we have put in a request for additional supports in evacuations, and so we'll have more to share as we make that request and await the federal government's approval of those requests.
Now, that was the Minister of BC Forests, Ravi Parmar in Victoria, briefing media on the new restrictions that they're putting into place in certain recreation and forested areas, especially a ban of recreation vehicles like ATVs, with the purpose of trying to avoid any human-caused fires when they're already dealing with so much. And also interesting that he said when he was asked about if they are any closer to knowing the cause of the Summerland fire that is so fast-moving and dangerous right now, saying that there is an active RCMP investigation into the cause of fire. So any questions on that should be directed to the RCMP, that they're preparing for the worst but hoping for the best when it comes to the forecast of dry lightning, and just also giving a picture of how difficult it has been to fight this fire and all the others that are out of control in British Columbia right now. You can continue to follow our coverage of the wildfire emergency and get all the latest updates online with CBC Lite. It's designed for users with slower internet connections, limited mobile data, or people who have older devices. Just head to cbc.ca/lite, that's LITE, /news.